The Great Plateau, the birthplace and the holiest site of the Kingdom of Hyrule, unless we count the guardian-infested nightmares like the Forgotten Temple. Since that place wasn't exactly explorable for non-Spirit of the Hero candidates, the Great Plateau with its landmark Temple of Time was the destination for pilgrims who made their way up from GATEPOST town, which we covered extensively in our previous comparison. This is also the point where we would greatly appreciate if you liked the video, press that subscribe button, notification bell and again for all notifications, and then if you don't want to be spoiled by late game spoilers in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, click away from this video in this instant. I'll give you time until the end of our historic introduction to the elevated plateau to get out and instead go and check out our comparison of the Chapter 2 towns surrounding the Great Plateau. Known as the birthplace of the Kingdom of Hyrule, the Great Plateau is also known as the former, or at least a reference to the castle town found in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, the one with its famous gate, Market Square, Temple of Time, and obviously Hyrule Castle, which was destroyed by Ganondorf in all of the 3 timeline branches. In the adult timeline, the Temple of Time served as the basis for the new Hyrule Castle, which eventually was submerged and possibly crushed by ocean water. In the downfall timeline, the town was gone, while in the child timeline, only its foundations remained deep within the Faron province, as Castletown was moved north, much like in the case of Breath of the Wild. Long after these events, the Temple of Time was rebuilt, and the area of and surrounding the former capital of Hyrule was elevated and became the surface of the Great Plateau. Naturally, we will begin our exploration from the entrance point of Gate Point Town, and then climb up the stairs to reach the surface of the plateau. This majestic staircase, surrounded by what appears to be accommodations and administration buildings in Age of Calamity, reminded visitors that you are about to enter the cradle of the Kingdom of Hyrule. While in Breath of the Wild, it is flooded after the gate that would drain the staircase was turned into a sealed dam during the defense of the plateau during the fall of Hyrule in the World of Ruin. As such, there isn't that much we can compare with right here, as we sadly couldn't swim underwater in Breath of the Wild. But you can still see the staircase and the surrounding area. But let's move on. Towards the Great Plateau, Sheikah Tower, which brought us onto a 120 shrine adventure and 14 additional towers to activate across Hyrule. In Age of Calamity we can only walk up next to it, but for a very crucial reason, which we'll soon get back to. Now then, let's get a little walking montage from it to our next landmarks. We've reached the arch, which in 1998 was the gate which led us towards Hyrule Castle, which in both Age of Calamity and Breath of the Wild leads up to its replacement. So let's speed up this footage up a little so we can get to and talk about the Eastern Abbey, or as it is called in Japanese, the Eastern Temple. In Breath of the Wild, we could explore the ruins from within, as the Jabai Shrine was located here. In Age of Calamity, however, we're only able to admire the Abbey Eastern Temple from a distance and just wonder how it looks inside. Why? As the game placed a massive invisible wall right in front of us. Thus the Abbey Temple is out of bounds territory in Age of Calamity, despite being on the Great Plateau. And this is an excellent moment to address the Great Plateau stage, as it obviously doesn't contain the entire plateau, only portions of it. Specifically, a little under 50% of it, even then, to a large extent condensed. So the distances are shorter than they were on the Great Plateau in Breath of the Wild. And also some areas have been cut. So let's say that they have included at least some of the section from the entrance next to the Sheikah Tower, the arch of the former Ocarina of Time Hyrule Castle, the forest of the plateau, and obviously the surrounding area of the Temple of Time, though not Mount Hylia, all areas requiring climbing or walking over cut down trees, and obviously the ice-cold provinces and the River of the Dead. The lack of these areas of the Great Plateau is understandable, as they aren't exactly battlefields. But you know what is a fitting battle setting? The area where the hut of the Old Man was found in Breath of the Wild. Well, the spirit of King Rome disguised as the Old Man. And look at that, the hut is there, which means that King Rome didn't build it, but it was there already 100 years ago. Seeing the hut again was so heartwarming, as this is one of the locations where we exchanged a few words with the king during Breath of the Wild. Other than the hut, there is not much more to see until we reach the edge of the map, and the enemy encampment that we also remember from Breath of the Wild. But now let's head for the Forest of Spirits. While we make our way over there, I will let the battle music from the Great Plateau play and have the two games compared side by side. Or actually, before heading into the forest, let's explore the location where Shrine Uman Au or Au Numa was located in Breath of the Wild. So here's where the shrine is hidden underground in Hyrule Warriors next to the shrine in Zelda Breath of the Wild. Obviously, the area is more condensed and the pond is smaller than it was in Breath of the Wild, but based on its location, next to the Great Plateau wall, we can point to this being the same location. Now, let's get into the Forest of the Spirits, which has also been shrunk down a lot, and where some areas are one and the same, as you also can see from our comparison right here, while others have not been included at all. So we'll have to do a few cuts here while we walk up to Hopper's Pond. But one thing that is common is that we can look up towards the cliff next to the Shrine of Resurrection. Don't worry, we're getting there, but first I want to highlight that there is a limitation to the forest, since the edge of the map of the battle stage, Great Plateau in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, is the edge of Hopper's Pond, which we cannot cross. So let's make our way back to the entrance of the Great Plateau, as next I have a real treat for you. Since it's finally time to climb the massive staircase leading to the central square of the plateau, which could have been the market square of Castletown in Ocarina of Time, or which is the temple square in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Obviously this one has been moved much closer to the temples than it was in Breath of the Wild, as you can also see from the footage right now. But in front of the Temple of Time, we have 3 other temples. Namely, the Temple or Chapel of Din, to our left the Temple or Chapel of Nehru, and to our right the Temple or Chapel of Furore. 3 structures dedicated to the 3 golden goddesses of power, wisdom and courage, and rightfully so, as their emblems are placed above the entrances to the temples. We now begin to realize why the Great Plateau is the holiest site to visit for the Hylians. It is just that these 3 temples or chapels leading up to the Temple of Time were in complete shambles in Breath of the Wild, and there was no way to find out that these were actually temples dedicated to the 3 golden goddesses. But when we place this same location side by side, then you will see loud and clear what I mean. But here's the kicker. So what did the golden goddesses do after completing their labors on the world they had just created? They left behind a relic of the Triforce in the care of Goddess Hylia. Yes, the Goddess Hylia, which statue we found in the Temple of Time. What symbol do we find above the entrance to the Temple of Time? The complete Triforce of power, wisdom and courage, which obviously Hylia as goddess didn't wield, but the Zeldas as her continued bloodline did. In other words, the 4 central temples of the Great Plateau are the creation story of the Zelda series. The 3 golden goddesses creating the world, leaving behind the Triforce and handing it in the care of Goddess Hylia, and an extension to the royal family and the bloodline of Zeldas. Now then, it's time to finally explore the temple itself, which you may have noticed is complete in Age of Calamity, though a little smaller than it was in Breath of the Wild, and doesn't lack most of one of its sides. The best way to compare the two is by walking up to the ladder, which we used before the old man revealed himself to be King of Rome. So much royalty and divinity in one location, and it gets even better inside. So as we walk up to Goddess Hylia, her statue, we pass a number of church-like benches which were missing in Breath of the Wild, as the guardians and monsters who broke their way in destroyed them during the Great Calamity of the World of Ruin. And other than that, there isn't much more to add. The architecture of the Temple of Time has always been similar to European Romanesque and Gothic churches, and its complete iteration in both Breath of the Wild and Age of Calamity hasn't changed much since the introduction of this location in Ocarina of Time. Speaking of Ocarina of Time, the connection of the castle town, market square, Temple of Time and site of the original Hyrule Castle is definitely there. But instead of ending in the unified branch of the Zelda timeline, we will conclude this video at its end, since it's time to teleport from the Great Plateau Sheikah Tower to the Shrine of Resurrection, at least to the section of it before the actual chamber, where Link slept for a century in the World of Ruin. Here you can clearly see that the door leading into the location where our adventure in Breath of the Wild started is closed, so instead let's head outside to the oh so famous cliff where many of us teed up in 2017. "2017 nostalgia at its very best. And now, let's head down, after taking in the beauty of the Great Plateau and the Temple of Time, and end this video by following the path down past the old man's fireplace, fake pedestal, and the path which first led us to the Temple of Time and the Sheikah Tower of the Great Plateau. On that note, we have covered the Great Plateau and its temples with side-by-side comparisons. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to like it and share it so more people can watch, and if you haven't already, then press that subscribe button, that notification bell, and again for all notifications. The more likes and views we get, the faster the next episode of this mini-series will go up. A big thanks goes to all our patreon.com/CommonRail patrons, and in particular our royal producer Charles Shash. You are the best. For the rest of you, please enjoy one or both of these two awesome videos.